In this video, I'm going to attempt to answer the question, do you own yourself? In a sense, are you really free? And it really is a question I'm delving into from a couple different aspects, and they're kept very simple. But for me, this is something I've been noodling around with a lot, very intensely for the last, especially 3 years, because the idea of freedom is one that's very elusive for many different reasons, and the layers are many. I've come to some definite conclusions where we can definitely be free or not be free, depending on these choices. Who owns you? Like, who owns your time? Is the real question you have to ask. Who owns your time? Hence the corporations that own your time. But then before that, you have the idea of being owned by the government in terms of collateral for the debt that they've created. And this one gets at the real conspiracy of ownership. Check this out.
After the Civil War, the United States defaulted on its war debt. During the bankruptcy proceedings, cunning lawyers in league with international bankers found a loophole within Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution, which allowed the creation of a duplicate entity known as the Corporation of the United States of America to replace the now bankrupt and defunct Republic of the United States of America. This occurred with the passage of the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871, which incorporated the area of the District of Columbia into a private foreign corporation chartered in the City of London known as the United States Incorporated. This corporation designated Congress as the board of directors to continue the business needs of the government under martial law. Thanks to the Lieber Code, federal jurisdiction under the Organic Act was expanded to include not only all captured citizens in the southern states, but all Americans in all states. Thus, America had lost her sovereignty under the yoke of the Crown of England and the international bankers. During this same time, the Corporation of the United States adopted its own constitution, which was identical to the original national constitution. To fool the people, one word was changed from its original form, the Constitution for the United States of America, to its present-day all-capitalized form, which signifies a corporate entity, the Constitution of the United States of America. Incidentally, the Titles of Nobility Amendment was removed from this new constitution.
So you are owned by a corporation that masks itself as the government. So in a sense, there are two different governments. Now, if you haven't seen this before, it's worth delving into, along with the Federal Reserve. And you could go down the rabbit holes to understand the whole thing completely, and the reason why there's a sovereign movement and so on. I think there are different parts to freedom. If you start to tackle the different parts, it becomes easier than tackling everything, because you get overwhelmed and figure there's nothing you can do. So we get this idea of the birth certificate, the corporation owning you. We're going to step back a bit and say, okay, what about time freedom? Right now, we can actually achieve that time freedom. And in that sense, understand how to unravel the rest. Check this out.
Structure creates freedom. This is a mental model. It doesn't need to be that you're an entrepreneur. The overwhelm comes when we give ourselves to-do lists. The intellectual way around this is to spend more time thinking through what we're actually trying to accomplish and what the highest leverage thing is that we should be doing, which means instead of quickly writing down a to-do list and then screwing ourselves with the overwhelm when it comes time to try to do it, I spend a lot more time planning before I put paper to pen how to articulate what I'm actually trying to do and what is actually trying to come through. 20% of the actions that you're taking in any area of your life are producing 80% of the results. If you can find those 20%, you remove the 80%. And then if you're now like, well, now I have all this free time, I want to be doing more and getting ahead. Cool. You double down on the 20%.
There's a lot of people, once they're awoken to what's possible, like they look at the 4-minute mile, right? Once Roger Bannister ran it, then other people did too. It's like going forward, doing the impossible, and then people see it and go, okay, I could do that too. It's opening up to that freedom. I think it takes a bit of rewiring our brains to look at history a bit differently, because when we look at our history, we think, oh, that's what's possible, when in fact, there are so many other things possible. Rewiring our brains so we see many more roads than the roads we're given. And it means breaking down what we've been told, breaking down what we can do, what's humanly possible, both on an individual and collective level, and going from there. Because I think our freedom relies upon that ability to see beyond what we've been told, what we've been shown, and so on. So the first road towards freedom is really breaking that whole paradigm, breaking it so that you can see well beyond and go, wait a minute, could I do that? And then testing and testing and testing and going beyond and beyond and beyond. And you realize there's much more magic in the universe than you ever thought there was before. That's why I think content is a great place to start, because it gets your mind, because once you start like just verbalizing things impromptu and speaking without having to follow a script and speaking from your own heart, from your own thoughts and your own way of being with that authority that we all have, but we haven't used. And when you start creating content in that way, it brings out that sense of voice and confidence. We find our voices again, and our sense of confidence comes back. And in that confidence is the ability to go off script, to be the jazz player of your life by going, okay, well, this comes up and that comes up, and you play with it, instead of being afraid to go off script. It all comes from school, of course, because we've been taught to, color within the lines, and creativity is less important than math and science and chemistry. Everything that's science-oriented trumps anything of the intuitive and creative mind. When in fact, you kind of flip that a bit, because each has their own interplay. You wouldn't want to say one's more important than the other. They feed each other. They feed off of each other. But we've been taught that one is more important. And therefore we subdued that part of ourselves, our part of our mind, that we need to learn to trust again. And that's where I think content comes into play. Creating content on a regular basis through video, through dance, through theater, through painting, whatever it might be, that expression actually brings out a part of yourself. And as you see the patterns, it actually mirrors yourself in a way. And you learn so much more. You can take that same learning and apply it to other areas of your life and create this dynamic that's much more diverse and equalized. There's an equilibrium that comes that allows you to play with life a lot more, with a lot more intentionality and capability than if you stay to the script that's been given to you by the world at large, by culture, by everything around us. The control is there by design, but we don't have to be controlled on an individual level. And the more of us that take control of our own lives, the time freedom that we need to be able to explore and express ourselves in ways that are organic to us, the more that we do that, the more it spills out into the collective. And therefore, we don't have to actually change the world. We just become full expressions of ourselves. And that is where spiritual evolution is revolution. Because as you spiritually evolve, you are the revolution in that evolution. And it spills out over to the rest of culture and life, and everything changes and is a dynamic that moves on and allow the global drama to unfold without this fear and this sense of despair, because it's all a game in a sense. And that game, when it's played effectively in your own life, can spill out into the larger as well. Now, there's a lot of videos that go into how you can escape the matrix. There is no one-time escape. It's an ongoing dynamic of ensuring your freedom on an ongoing basis. The same thing is, once you're free, doesn't mean you're always free. You have these tentacles that are always happening. You're always making choices. And those smaller choices and larger choices that you make, does it make you free, or does it entrap you more? And that's where I think the freedom really lies. Not in this dramatic, escape from the matrix this one time and you just have to do these couple of things and that's it. No, it's all these little choices that lead up to freedom or enslavement. And sometimes there are larger choices, but most of the time it's just the smaller. And so when you're making these choices in your life, it's saying, does this make me free, or does this enslave me? And when you can honestly answer that and make a choice for freedom, you perpetuate that freedom on an ongoing basis, and it keeps you there. It keeps you free. And a big part of that is just having an awareness to see those choices when they come up, and to make the right one, to make it as close as you can. Because sometimes you never see the tentacles that are behind and the layers that go on and on. There's all kinds of deception all over the place, and there's different layers of it. But when you keep things as simple as possible, in my experience so far, the simplest is often the easiest to remain free with. And the more complicated you make your life, the easier it is to get trapped or retrapped in the matrix and the lies and everything that goes on. So real freedom comes from a bit of simplicity and driving towards that simplicity on a regular basis. So the battle for freedom is ongoing. The easiest way to see that, if you were to become a sovereign individual, once you do, then you have to be willing to get hassled on a regular basis to keep that freedom. You'll have different individuals who don't know the laws, or you get into entrapment situations where you're constantly having to use specific language in specific ways to remain free and be willing. And this is the biggest part, because this is where the fear comes in. A lot of people would do that, but they're afraid of what could happen. You have to be willing to, in some cases, some people say you have to be willing to go to jail on several different counts. Even though you're right, there are judges, there are individuals who will try to entrap you. The more free you become, the more it becomes your responsibility to basically keep that freedom by staying knowledgeable and aware all of the time of what's going on around you, and words that you use, language that you use, things that you take into your life. Freedom is a huge undertaking because the system is so designed to keep us enslaved. That's scary. That's scary. It prevents people like myself or others from taking steps where they know there is the freedom, but it becomes, you have to learn so much and be very vigilant about, again, language, interactions. That's my understanding. And as I move towards freedom in different ways, sometimes I think I'm free, and other times I realize it's all an illusion. It's part of the illusion is to think you're free at different stages. And in fact, it's still just another level, another stage, another layer, and another layer, and another layer. And it's ongoing. But the more you move towards it, and the more you learn, the more I've realized a lot of the freedom is up here in our minds. And when you get that freedom, no matter what the situation you're in, you will also find freedom in the outer world. So if you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.